Hello. Portworx recently announced that PX-Backup is now available on the AWS Marketplace. Using the AWS Marketplace to deploy PX-Backup allows for a seamless installation and billing experience for Portworx customers that are running their containers in AWS on EKS clusters. Getting started with PX-Backup on AWS through the Marketplace is really easy, and that's what we'll cover in this demonstration. So we'll navigate to the AWS Marketplace and look for PX-Backup or Portworx and find the listing for Portworx PX-Backup. On the landing page, you will find details around the product overview, a few highlights around how PX-Backup can help you build a data protection solution for your containerized applications. You'll also find pricing information, and this can be the per hour pricing that we have, or if you want, you can also go for the reserved model where you can buy a contract for a year. And we'll see how to configure these things when we go through the deployment process. On the landing page, you'll also find links for additional resources, usage information. You'll also find our EULA. If you want to learn more about support, we'll also find support information for Portworx PX-Backup on the landing page. So the landing page is truly a single source of truth for all the details around PX-Backup. So now let's see how easy it is to get started with it. To install PX-Backup or subscribe to it from the AWS Marketplace, we'll hit on continue to subscribe. Here you'll find more details. Again, by default, it uses the hourly rate, but if you want to configure a contract, you can just click on configure contract and then select the unit type. So again, PX-Backup is licensed on a per node basis. You can select how many nodes you want to buy the license for, and you get a discounted rate because it's reserved pricing. You can click continue to configuration, select the version of Portworx PX-Backup. Right now it's just PX-Backup 2.0, but in the future you'll have multiple releases listed here. You can select which one you want to install in your AWS account. Once you have selected the delivery method and the software version, you can click continue to configuration, click on the usage instructions tab. This basically navigates you to a GitHub repo where you have a README file with all the instructions you need to set up PX-Backup in your AWS account. So as prerequisites, you need an AWS EKS cluster that's running in any AWS region, and then a CLI interface that's connected to your EKS cluster. We'll use Helm to install Portworx PX-Backup on your EKS cluster. You have all the commands listed here. So we'll begin by adding the Portworx repo to your Helm repository. So before we do that, let's just run a few commands on the EKS cluster to make sure that everything looks good. So kubectl get nodes, kubectl get storage class. Looks like our cluster is ready to go. So we'll copy paste the Helm repo add Portworx command to add the Helm repository. And then we'll use the second command, which basically installs a PX-Backup instance in a new namespace called PX-Backup, and it uses the AWS GP2 storage class for all the persistent volumes that PX-Backup needs. So we'll paste that command in the CLI and wait for the installation to complete. You can monitor the progress of the PX-Backup installation using commands like kubectl get pods for that PX-Backup namespace. And as you can see, we have a few container creating and some in the initialization phase. You can also use additional commands like kubectl get PVCs in the PX-Backup namespace to look at the persistent volumes that have been provisioned for PX-Backup. And again, this is using the GP2 storage class in your EKS clusters. One of the good things about PX-Backup is that it uses load balancer, so you don't have to do any port forwarding if you don't want to. So by doing a get service in the PX-Backup namespace, you can find the external IP or external load balancer endpoint that you can navigate to once everything is deployed successfully to access PX-Backup user interface. Let's do get pods again, and you can see that it's still going in progress. If you remember, when we did the Helm install, we got a kubectl command that we can use to see whether the installation was successful or not. So we can copy that command, and then basically we have to wait for it to enter the running state, and then once it's done running, it will enter the completed state, and that's when we know where that our PX-Backup installation is done. One good thing about PX Backup is you don't need to install Portworx Enterprise on your EKS clusters. You can use this with AWS GP2 storage class as well. Let's do a watch on the kubectl get pods command for the PX Backup namespace and monitor the deployment of the different pods that are needed for PX Backup. Again, this takes a few minutes. So we have sped up the demo to a point where all the pods are now in a running state and have been deployed successfully. So let's just run the command again and make sure that it looks good. So kubectl get pods in the PX Backup namespace shows that everything is running. If we do the kubectl get pods for the post install hook pod, it shows that it's completed, which means that all the different initialization steps have been done successfully. Before we can start using PX Backup through the user interface, we have to execute a couple of commands to prepare our EKS cluster and create a new IAM service account and then associate it with our EKS cluster. So again, those commands are listed on the GitHub README page. You just have to replace the name of the cluster with the name of your EKS cluster. So again, you can do that for both the commands and run it against your EKS cluster or your AWS account, and we'll deploy all the backend things that are needed for EKS to associate it with PX Backup so that it picks up the license that you subscribe to from the marketplace. Once the deployment is done, we can use additional commands like kubectl get service to get the endpoint. So just making sure that we completed all the steps, we'll do kubectl get service in the PX Backup namespace and copy the load balancer endpoint that we got from AWS. So once we copy this, navigate to a browser and go to that URL, you will find PX Backup with a fresh installation. We log in using the default credentials. And as soon as you log in with the default credential, it asks you to change the password to something that's more secure. So we'll set a new password and then confirm it. And this is the password for our admin account. We'll change the email and first name and last name based on what your user configuration. But at this point, you have a PX Backup installation that's ready to start protecting your containerized applications. Let's navigate to the license tab and make sure that it picked up the license that you subscribe to from the AWS Marketplace. So you can see that the license type is AWS, status is active. So you're ready to go. You have an entitled PX Backup installation that you can use to protect your applications running on EKS. A couple of more things that we'll cover in this demo is just add our AWS account using our AWS secret key and access key. And then once we have that, we'll go ahead and add our EKS cluster to the PX Backup instance. So for that, we'll run the kubectl config view flatten minify account and copy the output from the CLI and give the cluster a name, paste the kubectl output here, select our Kubernetes service as EKS, select the cloud account, ensure that Stork has been successfully running on our EKS cluster, and that's it. You have a PX Backup installation with an EKS cluster added that's ready to start protecting your application. So you can use PX Backup for Kubernetes backup and restore for any applications that are running on Amazon EKS. That's how easy it is to get started with PX Backup using the AWS Marketplace. That's it for this demo. Thanks for watching.